Have you ever procrastinated so much that the deadline was right in front of you, but you still hadn't started? Today, I'm going to share with you the secret of how to beat procrastination fast. Simple but powerful techniques that will help you take action immediately and regain your focus. If you're tired of being stuck in the cycle of procrastination, this video is exactly what you need. Procrastination is often treated as a simple bad habit, but in truth it runs much deeper than just laziness or lack of discipline. To truly beat procrastination fast, the first step is to understand the root cause of why it happens in the first place. Without clarity on why you put things off, every other productivity technique feels temporary, like putting a bandage on a wound without healing it. People procrastinate for a variety of reasons, and most of them are tied to emotions, fears, and thought patterns rather than simply time management. When you pause to dig beneath the surface, you discover that procrastination is less about not wanting to do the task, and more about the way you feel about the task. For many, procrastination is triggered by fear. Fear of failure, fear of not meeting expectations, or even fear of success. Imagine you have a big project due at work. It could be the chance to prove yourself, but deep down you worry that your performance will not be good enough. That fear paralyzes you, so instead of facing the task, you distract yourself with social media, cleaning your desk, or convincing yourself you'll start later. This delay is your mind's way of protecting you from the discomfort of possibly failing, but it actually guarantees stress and pressure in the long run. Recognizing fear as a driver of procrastination is powerful because once you see it clearly, you can begin to challenge it. You can ask yourself, am I afraid of the task itself, or am I afraid of what others might think of the outcome? Often, simply naming that fear reduces its power. Another root cause is overwhelm. When tasks appear too large or too complicated, the mind interprets them as threatening. Think of a college student assigned to write a 40-page thesis. The project feels like climbing a mountain with no visible path. In that moment, the natural reaction is to avoid it altogether. But avoidance only grows the mountain taller. Understanding that overwhelm leads to procrastination allows you to reframe the challenge. The task isn't one massive climb, but a series of smaller steps. Acknowledging overwhelm doesn't make the task easier instantly, but it provides insight into why the delay happens, which is the first step toward breaking it down and moving forward. Lack of motivation is another major trigger. Motivation often comes from clarity of purpose, but when the reason behind a task is vague, it's hard to summon the energy to start. Take the example of organizing financial documents. It might not feel urgent or inspiring, so you push it aside for weeks. Yet, if you connect the task to its true purpose, such as reducing financial stress or preparing for a major life goal, the motivation can shift quickly. By identifying lack of motivation as the core reason, you can search for ways to reignite interest, whether that's by reminding yourself of the benefits, setting external accountability, or pairing the task with something rewarding. Perfectionism also fuels procrastination. Striving to do everything perfectly often leads to paralysis because perfection is unattainable. You hesitate to start until conditions feel just right, which means you may never start at all. A writer may put off drafting a book because they want the first page to be flawless, forgetting that first drafts are meant to be messy. By recognizing perfectionism as the root, you can reframe the standard. Aim for progress, not perfection. Awareness of perfectionist tendencies lets you consciously choose to take imperfect action, which is far better than endless hesitation. There is also the issue of low energy and poor self-management. Sometimes procrastination isn't about fear, overwhelm, or perfection, but about not having the physical or mental resources to begin. If you are consistently sleep-deprived, running on caffeine, or mentally exhausted, your brain resists tasks that require focus. In this case, procrastination is a signal, not a flaw. The root cause is not the task itself, but the lack of energy available to complete it. Understanding this prevents self-blame and allows you to make changes, resting, exercising, or improving nutrition that directly combat the problem at its core. By digging deeper, you may even notice that procrastination is a way of regulating emotions. Tasks can evoke stress, boredom, anxiety, or frustration. Instead of facing those uncomfortable emotions, people escape into easier activities that provide instant gratification. Checking emails, scrolling through TikTok, or watching YouTube are not inherently bad, but they become tools for avoidance when they replace important tasks. Here, the root cause is not the task itself, but your brain's attempt to avoid unpleasant emotions. This insight is crucial because once you realize procrastination is emotional, not logical, you can focus on building strategies to handle emotions instead of blaming yourself for being lazy. Self-awareness is the bridge to change. When you notice that you are putting something off, pause and ask, why am I procrastinating right now? Am I afraid of failing? Am I overwhelmed by the size of the task? Am I waiting for motivation to magically appear? Or am I simply tired and emotionally drained? This simple reflection transforms procrastination from a mysterious force into something you can analyze and manage. It shifts the problem from "I am lazy" to "I am avoiding this because of X reason." That clarity is empowering because you can then apply the right solution. For instance, if fear of failure is the cause, you can remind yourself that starting small reduces risk. If overwhelm is the cause, you can break the task into the tiniest possible step. If lack of motivation is the issue, you can reconnect with the bigger purpose. If perfectionism is driving your delay, you can deliberately lower the bar and focus on completion. If low energy is to blame, you can prioritize rest and recovery. Each root cause has a different solution, and without knowing the cause, you end up trying random tips that don't stick. Understanding the root cause also allows you to develop compassion for yourself. Too often, people treat procrastination as proof of weakness, which only adds guilt and shame to the cycle. But when you see procrastination as a signal of an underlying issue, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, you shift from self-criticism to problem-solving. You are no longer the enemy of your productivity. You are the detective searching for clues. This mindset reduces the negative spiral of guilt and empowers you to take constructive action. Ultimately, beating procrastination fast begins not with action, but with awareness. You cannot fix what you do not understand. The first step is to shine a light on the hidden reasons behind your delay. Once you see the fear, the overwhelm, the perfectionism, or the lack of energy, you can tailor your strategies to directly address those issues. Procrastination then transforms from a confusing obstacle into a clear signal, guiding you toward the deeper changes you need to make. And with this foundation of understanding, every other productivity technique becomes more effective because you are no longer fighting the symptom. You are treating the cause. One of the fastest and most practical ways to beat procrastination is by applying the 2-minute rule. At first glance, the rule sounds almost too simple. If a task takes less than 2 minutes to do, just do it immediately. Yet behind its simplicity lies profound psychological power. Procrastination thrives in the gap between intention and action. The longer you wait, the more excuses your brain invents. The 2-minute rule short-circuits this delay by removing the mental debate altogether. When you encounter a task, instead of asking yourself, "Should I do this now or later?" you simply act if it can be done in under 2 minutes. This bypasses the endless loop of hesitation and instantly builds momentum. Consider everyday scenarios. You see a dirty coffee mug on your desk. Washing it takes less than 2 minutes, but you might be tempted to leave it for later. If you apply the 2-minute rule, you take it to the sink right away and suddenly your workspace feels cleaner. You receive a short email that needs only a quick reply. Instead of flagging it for later, you respond immediately, clearing your inbox faster. These small actions may seem insignificant, but together they create a ripple effect that reduces clutter, both physical and mental. Each quick win also gives your brain a hit of accomplishment, reinforcing the behavior and making you more likely to tackle the next task without delay. The brilliance of the 2-minute rule is that it also helps you overcome the biggest barrier to productivity: getting started. Most people don't procrastinate because they are unwilling to work at all, but because starting feels intimidating. The beginning of a task often carries the heaviest resistance. Once you begin, momentum takes over. The 2-minute rule exploits this principle by lowering the threshold for starting. For instance, if you dread going for a run, the 2-minute version of that task might simply be putting on your running shoes and stepping outside. Once you're in motion, you are far more likely to keep going. If you've been postponing writing an article, the 2-minute action could be opening your laptop and typing a single sentence. From there, the act of writing becomes easier, and you often continue far beyond 2 minutes. It's important to understand that the 2-minute rule works on 2 levels. First, it helps you immediately complete tiny tasks that would otherwise pile up and become overwhelming. These are the short emails, the small chores, the quick decisions. Second, It acts as an entry point for larger tasks by creating a minimal version that takes only 2 minutes. You're not tricking yourself into finishing the whole project right away, but you're gently nudging yourself past inertia. Once the hardest part, starting, is behind you, momentum often carries you further. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that once you start something, your brain has a natural desire to see it through. By beginning with just 2 minutes, you harness this mental bias in your favor. Skeptics sometimes argue that 2 minutes is too short to make a difference. But the truth is, consistent application of the rule builds a chain reaction of progress. Imagine if you completed just 10 2-minute tasks each day. That's only 20 minutes of effort, yet it could clear dozens of small obstacles from your path. More importantly, it prevents these tiny tasks from snowballing into big burdens. Think of unpaid bills left on the table, dishes left in the sink, or emails ignored for days. Each neglected task grows heavier with time, draining your mental energy. By handling them instantly, you keep your environment and your mind clear, leaving more bandwidth for bigger goals. Another reason the 2-minute rule is effective is that it trains your brain to favor action over hesitation. Procrastination becomes a habit when your default response to a task is to delay. The 2-minute rule rewires this habit by flipping the script. The default becomes doing it now. Every time you act immediately, you strengthen the identity of someone who takes action quickly. Over time, this identity shift reduces procrastination across all areas of life. You begin to see yourself not as someone who postpones, but as someone who handles things promptly. This subtle change in self-perception is powerful because our actions often follow our identity. The rule also encourages mindfulness. By pausing to ask, "Can this be done in less than 2 minutes?" you bring awareness to your decisions instead of operating on autopilot. Many people procrastinate unconsciously. They push tasks aside without realizing the cost. The 2-minute rule shines a light on these micro moments of choice. It turns unconscious avoidance into conscious action. Even if a task takes longer than 2 minutes, the question itself makes you think more intentionally about how to approach it. You might decide to schedule it, delegate it, or break it down, rather than simply ignoring it. Of course, the 2-minute rule is not a magic bullet for every situation. It is best applied to tasks that truly are small or as a starting point for larger ones. You shouldn't attempt to finish complex projects in 2 minutes, nor should you allow quick tasks to distract you from deep work. The key is balance. Use the rule to clear the clutter and create momentum, but protect your time for focused effort on meaningful goals. In practice, many people find that starting with a 2-minute task acts as a warm-up before diving into larger, scheduled work. It primes the brain to act, making the transition to bigger challenges smoother. The simplicity of the rule also makes it adaptable. You can integrate it into personal life, work, or creative pursuits. In personal life, it might mean making your bed, replying to a text, or putting laundry into the basket right away. At work, it can mean logging expenses, replying to colleagues, or filing documents. For creative projects, it can be sketching one idea, writing one sentence, or brainstorming for 2 minutes. Each application chips away at procrastination and reinforces the cycle of action. In the end, the 2-minute rule is not about the tasks themselves. It's about the mindset it cultivates. It teaches you that action is easier than avoidance, that momentum begins with small steps, and that starting is the gateway to finishing. By embracing this rule, you strip procrastination of its power. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the right mood, you simply do what you can right now. And once you start living by that principle, you discover that beating procrastination fast is not about willpower or discipline. It's about building a lifestyle where action becomes automatic. When procrastination feels overwhelming, one of the most powerful strategies to overcome it quickly is to break big tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. At first, this may sound obvious, but the psychology behind it is profound. Human brains are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. When a task appears enormous, complicated, or unclear, it triggers feelings of stress and anxiety. In response, your brain wants to escape and look for comfort in easier activities like scrolling through your phone or watching videos. That avoidance creates a cycle. The bigger the task feels, the more you delay, and the more intimidating it becomes. The solution is to shrink the mountain into pebbles, transforming the intimidating into something achievable, and the vague into something clear. Imagine being asked to clean and reorganize your entire house. The sheer scale of that project feels exhausting before you even begin. But if you break it down into smaller steps, such as clear one drawer, wipe one shelf, or organize one corner of the living room, suddenly the task feels manageable. Each step is small enough to start immediately, and each completion builds momentum for the next. This is why breaking tasks down is so effective. It changes the narrative from, "I have to do everything," to, "I only have to do this one small thing." That subtle shift removes the weight of overwhelm and makes progress. Possible psychologists describe this as chunking, the process of dividing large goals into smaller pieces. When you chunk tasks, you reduce cognitive load. Instead of holding the entire project in your mind, which feels heavy and complicated, you only focus on the next step. This frees up mental energy and makes action easier. For example, writing a 10,000-word report is intimidating, but writing the first 200 words or even just outlining 3 key ideas feels doable. Once you start, momentum carries you forward, and before long, the larger goal begins to take shape. Breaking down tasks also leverages the power of progress. Progress, no matter how small, is deeply motivating. Researchers in behavioral psychology have found that people are more likely to continue working when they feel a sense of advancement. This is known as the progress principle. By dividing a large project into many smaller steps, you create more opportunities to experience progress. Each completed step becomes a mini-celebration, releasing dopamine in the brain and reinforcing the behavior. In other words, the smaller you break the task, the more frequently you get to feel successful, and success fuels momentum. There's another advantage: clarity. Often procrastination happens because tasks are vague. If your to-do list simply says, "Work on business plan," that's unclear.
Where do you start?
What does "work on" even mean? The vagueness creates uncertainty, which breeds avoidance. But if you rewrite it as "write the mission statement" or "draft 3 bullet points for marketing strategy," the task becomes concrete. Clarity reduces resistance because the brain now sees a specific action instead of a blurry, overwhelming concept. Breaking big tasks into smaller steps can also help you bypass perfectionism. When you're looking at a massive goal, you feel pressure to get it right, to do it perfectly from the start. That pressure makes you freeze. But when you only need to complete a tiny step, like writing a rough outline or sketching a quick draft, the stakes feel lower. You're more willing to take imperfect action, which is far better than not acting at all. Over time, these imperfect steps accumulate into meaningful progress. Practical application is simple but powerful. Take any overwhelming task and ask yourself, what is the smallest possible step I can take right now? If the task is write a book, the smallest step might be write 1 sentence. If the task is start exercising, the first step could be put on workout shoes. If the task is organize finances, the step might be gather receipts from last week. The goal is not to finish the entire project at once, but to lower the barrier to starting. Once you're in motion, you often find yourself doing more than you expected, but the trick is to make that first step easy enough that you can't say no. This method also works beautifully when combined with scheduling. Instead of blocking 3 hours for project work, which feels daunting, you can schedule a 20-minute block for one specific step. Over time, these focused bursts add up to massive results. Think of it as building a wall by laying 1 brick at a time. Each brick may look small, but together they form something solid and impressive. Breaking down tasks gives you a sense of control over the process, making procrastination less likely to creep in. It's worth noting that breaking tasks into smaller steps does not mean lowering your ambitions. Quite the opposite, it means creating a realistic pathway toward achieving them. Big dreams require consistent action, and consistency comes from making tasks small enough to be repeatable. The difference between those who achieve goals and those who remain stuck often lies in this ability to simplify and act. Those who stay paralyzed by the size of their goals end up delaying forever, while those who break them into steps move forward bit by bit. There's also a deeper psychological shift that happens when you adopt this strategy. You begin to realize that procrastination is not a character flaw, but a response to how your brain perceives tasks. By breaking down work, you're not only changing your behavior, you're changing your relationship with effort. You teach your brain that action doesn't have to be painful or overwhelming. This mindset makes it easier to tackle future challenges, because you've built trust in your ability to move forward, no matter how big the task. In real life, the most successful people often use this principle instinctively. Athletes break training into daily routines instead of focusing on the Olympics all at once. Entrepreneurs launch with small steps like testing an idea before building a full business. Writers commit to writing a page a day instead of an entire book overnight. These strategies are all variations of breaking down goals into manageable actions, and the result is consistent progress without the crushing weight of procrastination. So when you feel stuck, staring at a giant project you've been putting off, remember this: the fastest way to beat procrastination is not to summon enormous willpower or wait for perfect motivation. It's to take the intimidating whole and slice it into parts so small you can't help but act. Each step builds momentum, each bit of progress creates energy, and soon what once felt impossible becomes achievable. The mountain shrinks, not because it is smaller, but because you've learned to climb it one step at a time. Procrastination often thrives in an environment full of distractions and temptations. Even if you understand the task and break it into smaller steps, you may still find yourself pulled away by notifications, noise, or clutter around you. That's why creating a focused environment is essential for beating procrastination fast. Your surroundings play a huge role in shaping your behavior. If your environment constantly invites you to delay work, procrastination becomes the default. But if you intentionally design your space and routines to support focus, you reduce friction and make action easier. Think about how most people try to work. Their phone buzzes with messages, emails pop up every few minutes, the desk is piled with clutter, and background noise competes for attention. In such conditions, it's not surprising that tasks get delayed. Procrastination is not always about lack of discipline. It's often about being in the wrong environment. By taking control of the spaces where you work, you take away excuses and reduce the energy wasted on resisting temptations. In other words, a distraction-free environment removes the triggers that make procrastination so appealing. The first step in creating focus is eliminating digital distractions. Smartphones, social media, and constant notifications are among the biggest culprits of procrastination. Each time your attention is pulled away, it takes minutes to refocus. Research has shown that even the presence of a phone on your desk without using it can reduce concentration. To beat procrastination, put your phone in another room, turn on airplane mode, or use apps that block distracting websites. This doesn't mean cutting yourself off permanently, but it creates a bubble of focus when you need it most. By removing the temptation, you no longer waste energy on resisting it. You simply focus on the task. Next, consider your physical environment. A messy desk or cluttered room can make the mind feel chaotic. Visual distractions remind you of other tasks, creating mental noise that competes with your focus. Taking a few minutes to tidy your workspace can dramatically improve clarity and reduce procrastination. It's not about having a perfectly minimal setup, but about creating an environment where your brain associates the space with getting things done. For example, if you always work on the couch where you watch TV, your mind associates that spot with relaxation, making procrastination more likely. But if you set up a dedicated workspace, even a small table, your brain begins to recognize it as a place for focused action. One of the most powerful techniques for maintaining focus is the Pomodoro method. It's simple: set a timer for 25 minutes, work without distractions, then take a 5-minute break. This cycle trains your brain to concentrate in bursts and reduces the feeling of overwhelm. Instead of saying, "I need to work for 3 hours," you only commit to 25 minutes. This small, manageable chunk of time lowers resistance and gets you started. Once you begin, momentum often keeps you going for longer than planned. The Pomodoro technique also ensures regular breaks, which prevent burnout and make focus sustainable. Environment also extends beyond the physical into the social. If you surround yourself with people who are constantly distracted or unmotivated, procrastination becomes contagious. On the other hand, working near focused individuals can increase your own productivity. This is why co-working spaces, study groups, or accountability partners are so effective. They create a social environment where focus is normalized and procrastination feels out of place. Simply being in the presence of others who are working can encourage you to take action. Another way to strengthen your environment against procrastination is to use cues and rituals. When you have a consistent routine before starting work, your brain associates that ritual with focus. For example, lighting a candle, putting on noise-canceling headphones, or playing instrumental music can signal that it's time to concentrate. Over time, these cues condition your brain to enter work mode faster, reducing the delay that procrastination feeds on. Rituals transform the start of a task from a mental battle into a simple habit. Technology, while often a source of distraction, can also be used to your advantage. There are apps that block websites, set timers, or track progress to help you stay accountable. Tools like noise generators or focus music playlists can drown out background distractions. Even small adjustments, like switching your phone screen to grayscale to make it less appealing, can reduce procrastination significantly. The goal is to design your digital environment as intentionally as your physical one, so every element supports action instead of avoidance. It's also important to recognize that environment influences energy. Lighting, temperature, and even posture affect how alert you feel. A dimly lit, stuffy room may drain your motivation, while a bright, well-ventilated space can energize you. Standing desks, ergonomic chairs, or even simply sitting upright can make a difference in how ready you feel to tackle tasks. Procrastination often sneaks in when energy dips, so optimizing your environment for alertness is a subtle but powerful strategy. Perhaps the most overlooked part of creating a focused environment is removing friction. Friction is any small barrier that makes it harder to start a task. If your workspace requires you to search for materials, untangle cables, or clear space before you begin, procrastination becomes more likely. To beat this, prepare your environment in advance. Lay out your tools, open the right documents, and set up everything you need so the path to starting is as smooth as possible. The easier it is to begin, the less chance your brain has to resist. Ultimately, beating procrastination is not just about willpower, it's about design. When you design an environment that minimizes distractions, maximizes focus, and reduces friction, you make procrastination less convenient. Instead of fighting temptation all day, you remove it from your path. Instead of struggling to motivate yourself, you create conditions where action becomes natural. By shaping your surroundings intentionally, you shift the odds in your favor and discover that focus isn't a battle you have to win every time. It's the natural outcome of being in the right environment. One of the most overlooked but incredibly effective ways to beat procrastination fast is by rewarding yourself after completing tasks. People often think of productivity as something that should be fueled purely by discipline or self-control. But the human brain doesn't work that way. We are driven by reward systems. Dopamine, the chemical associated with motivation and pleasure, is released when we anticipate or experience a reward. Without rewards, tasks feel like endless obligations, which makes procrastination far more tempting. By setting up small, intentional rewards for yourself, you transform work from a burden into an activity that your brain actually wants to engage in. Imagine finishing a difficult report for work. Without a reward, you may feel relief, but your brain doesn't necessarily link the hard work with pleasure. Now imagine promising yourself a 10-minute break to enjoy your favorite snack, watch a short video, or go for a walk once the report is complete. Suddenly, the task carries an additional incentive. Your brain begins to associate task completion with a positive outcome. Over time, this conditioning makes it easier to start and finish tasks because your subconscious expects something enjoyable at the end. This isn't manipulation, it's harnessing the way your brain naturally operates. Rewards don't need to be large or extravagant to be effective. In fact, small immediate rewards often work better than big distant ones. For example, telling yourself you'll take a week-long vacation once you finish a 6-month project might not help much in the moment, because the reward feels too far away. But promising yourself a cup of coffee after finishing a section, or watching one episode of a show after completing a big task, provides instant reinforcement. These small rewards act like stepping stones, keeping you motivated throughout the process instead of only at the very end. The act of rewarding yourself also helps break the cycle of negative emotions tied to procrastination. Often we put off tasks because they feel unpleasant, boring, or stressful. But when you link those same tasks to rewards, you change your brain's association. Instead of "this task equals stress," it becomes "this task leads to something enjoyable." That shift can be enough to tip the scales from avoidance to action. Over time, the positive feedback loop makes you less likely to procrastinate because your brain begins to crave the satisfaction of both completing the task and receiving the reward. There's also the motivational boost that comes from anticipation. Looking forward to a reward creates excitement and energy. For example, If you know that completing your daily workout means you get to watch your favorite show guilt-free, you'll feel more motivated to exercise. Anticipation gives your brain something to focus on beyond the discomfort of the task itself. This future-focused mindset helps you push through resistance and keep moving forward. Of course, rewards don't always have to be external. Internal rewards, like the sense of pride, relief, or accomplishment that comes from finishing something, are powerful too. Taking a moment to acknowledge your progress, to tell yourself, "I did it," can be just as motivating as treating yourself to something tangible. The key is to consciously recognize the completion of the task instead of rushing on to the next. Celebrating progress strengthens the connection between effort and satisfaction, which helps break the cycle of procrastination. When using rewards, balance is important. If you make the reward too big or unrelated to the task, it can backfire. For example, eating an entire cake every time you answer an email clearly isn't sustainable. Rewards should match the scale of the effort. Small tasks deserve small rewards, while bigger tasks can earn bigger ones. This proportionality keeps the system motivating without becoming excessive. It also ensures that the reward feels earned, which makes it more satisfying. Another smart approach is to combine rewards with tasks you already enjoy. For example, if you love listening to a certain playlist, only allow yourself to listen to it when working on a specific project. If you enjoy a particular snack, save it for moments of productivity. By linking enjoyable experiences to productive actions, you train your brain to view the task more positively. This technique, often called temptation bundling, uses rewards as a way to make even unpleasant tasks more attractive. Social rewards can also be powerful. Sharing your progress with a friend, posting about your accomplishment, or receiving praise from colleagues can act as external motivators. Human beings are wired to value recognition, and even small acknowledgments can boost motivation. Accountability partners work especially well here. When you complete a task, you not only reward yourself, but you also get the satisfaction of telling someone else about your success. This social element doubles the incentive and makes procrastination less appealing. The deeper purpose of rewards isn't just about making tasks fun, it's about reshaping your relationship with productivity. Too often, work is seen as a constant grind, and procrastination becomes a way to escape that pressure. Rewards flip the equation. Instead of work being a source of dread, it becomes a gateway to positive experiences. Over time, this shift changes how you approach challenges. You stop viewing tasks as punishments and start viewing them as opportunities to earn satisfaction. Ultimately, rewarding yourself is about working with your brain, not against it. Procrastination happens because your brain wants short-term comfort over long-term goals. Rewards allow you to bring short-term comfort into the process of achieving those goals, bridging the gap between effort and pleasure. By creating this link, you outsmart procrastination instead of fighting it head-on. Every completed task becomes not just a step forward, but also a moment of enjoyment. The beauty of this strategy is that it scales with your life. Whether it's finishing a small household chore, completing an important project at work, or taking a step toward a long-term dream, rewards provide the fuel to keep going. You don't need to rely on endless willpower or wait for motivation to magically appear. You just need to give your brain what it craves, a reason to act now. And once you start rewarding yourself consistently, you'll discover that procrastination loses its grip, because productivity itself starts to feel rewarding. Remember, once you apply these strategies, you'll beat procrastination faster than ever. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, share it with your friends. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next tips to boost your productivity every single day. See you in the next video.